Chioma travelled all the way from Nsukka to Lagos with a small food flask in her hand, her son Junior asleep beside her on the bus, and a heart full of love. She just wanted to surprise her husband, to remind him that his family still existed, that the woman who once sold bread under the sun still believed in the man she built with her sweat. After hours of bumpy roads and exhaustion, she finally stood before the brown door of his apartment. Junior held her hand tightly, his little eyes blinking in excitement. "Mummy, is Daddy inside?" he asked. She smiled softly. "Yes, my son. Daddy will be so happy to see us." But when the door opened, it wasn't her husband that stood there. It was another woman, beautiful, polished, smiling like she owned the world. "Yes, can I help you?" the woman asked, sharply. Chioma adjusted her wrapper, holding Junior's hand. "I'm looking for Ibuka," she said quietly. "I'm his wife." The woman frowned, then called inside with a smirk, "Baby, there's someone here claiming to be your wife." Then he appeared, in shorts, holding a mug of coffee, his voice trembling as he whispered, "Chioma, you shouldn't have come here unannounced." Unannounced. That was all he could say. Despite all Chioma's endurance, despite the nights she went hungry so he could chase his dreams. Junior looked up, confused. "Daddy, don't you remember me?" he asked innocently. Ibuka froze. The woman glanced at him and scoffed. "So, this is your wife and your son? Let me take you back to how it all started. It was a hot afternoon in Nsukka. The road was busy, buses honking, hawkers shouting, and the smell of engine oil floating from a small mechanic workshop at the corner of the street. Chioma balanced a tray of freshly baked bread on her head. She wore a faded gown, her face glistening with sweat. Beside the workshop, a young man, dark, lean, with grease-stained hands, was bent under a broken-down Peugeot. "Mechanic!" a driver shouted. "Coming, sir," the young man answered, his voice confident and strong. When Chioma passed by, he looked up briefly. Their eyes met, and he smiled. And that was how they met. At first, it was just small greetings. "Good afternoon, Chioma, the bread seller." "Good afternoon, Ibuka, the oil boy." Then small greetings became long talks, and long talks became something deeper. They had nothing, but every time Chioma laughed, Ibuka's heart forgot how hard life was. Chioma's mother, Mama Grace, didn't like him. "Chioma, I warned you. How can a girl who is already suffering go and fall in love with a mechanic apprentice?" "Mama, he's not lazy," Chioma replied gently. "He has dreams." "Dreams don't cook soup," her mother fired back. "Find a man that can feed you, not one that will add to your suffering." But Chioma's heart was stubborn. She saw something in Ibuka, a man who might be poor in the pocket, but rich in character. Their love grew like wild flowers. They would sit behind the workshop after work, sharing one plate of rice from the food seller nearby. Sometimes, Ibuka would look at her and say softly, "One day, I'll buy you your own shop, Chioma. You won't hawk under the sun again." And she would smile. "I'll wait, Ibuka. I'll wait for that day." But love alone couldn't pay rent or feed a hungry stomach. Ibuka wanted more from life. He didn't want to die as a mechanic. He started dreaming of becoming a certified mechanical engineer. So he decided to further his education by gaining admission into a polytechnic. But money was a mountain he couldn't climb. That was when Chioma stepped in. She didn't have much, but every day she hawked bread, cold drinks, and pure water under the hot sun. She could sell up to 4 or 5 trays daily, earning just enough to keep herself and help him. At first, Mama Grace refused. "Chioma, are you now sponsoring a man?" But Chioma insisted. "Mama, if I don't help him now, who will? He's the man I love." Mama Grace sighed. "Love will show you Pepper one day." In Ebuka's second year, Chioma got pregnant. At first, she was scared to tell him. But when she finally did, his reaction melted her heart. He held her hands tightly and said, "Don't cry, Chioma. This baby will be our blessing, not our shame." True to his word, he never abandoned her. Even when his friends mocked him for tying himself down early, Ebuka remained faithful. He visited her every weekend, washing her clothes, cooking, and whispering, "One day, we'll laugh about these hard times." Chioma believed him every word. Months later, Chioma gave birth to a baby boy. They named him Junior. The delivery was hard, but when she saw the baby's face, every pain disappeared. Even with the baby on her back, she continued hawking bread. People pitied her, but she smiled through it all. "I'm doing this for my family," she would say. Ebuka, still in school, studied hard. Every break, he worked as a roadside mechanic to earn small money, sending part to Chioma and their child. They lived in a single room, 1 bed, 1 stove, 1 dream. And for a while, life was bearable. When Ebuka finished school, he needed to take a professional engineering certification exam to qualify for better jobs. The fee was high, too high for him. He almost gave up, but Chioma refused. "Ebuka, you must write that exam," she said firmly. "With what money?" he asked, defeated. "With mine," she answered. From the little she earned daily, Chioma saved secretly. For 6 months, she kept the money inside a small metal box in their room. When she handed the money to him, Ebuka's eyes filled with tears. "Chioma, how did you get this money?" She smiled. "I have been keeping it to expand my business, but you needed it more. You're my future, Ebuka, and I'm investing in my future." He hugged her tightly that night. In that moment, her love was his strength. Months later, he passed the exam. Then came a letter that changed their lives forever. "Congratulations, Mr. Ebuka Okafor. You have been offered a position as a mechanical engineer with Royal Oil Nigeria Limited, Lagos." They both cried that day. Chioma danced around their small room, holding the letter like it was gold. She knelt before him and said, "God has done it for us, Ebuka. Our suffering is over." He lifted her up. "Our story has just begun." A week later, Chioma woke up before sunrise, cooked his favorite jollof rice, and packed his clothes neatly in a small box. She had washed and ironed every shirt herself. Even though she didn't own an iron, she borrowed one from a neighbor. When he stepped out of their small room with his bag, she smiled through tears. "Don't forget us, Ebuka." He laughed softly and kissed her forehead. "How can I forget you, Chioma? You and Junior are my life." Those words became her anchor. She watched the bus leave that morning with trembling hands, clutching their son to her chest, whispering, "God, please protect my husband and protect his heart." Lagos welcomed Ebuka with noise, bright lights, and temptation. He got a company apartment, small but modern, and a salary he had never dreamed of earning. For the first time in his life, Ebuka didn't have to count coins before buying food. The oil company treated him well. They gave him uniforms, access cards, and even an official driver for field inspections. At work, people respected him. Engineer Ebuka, they called him fondly. He joined the company gym, bought new clothes, and learned to speak English with a sharper accent. He stopped using yes-oh and no wahala. Now it was absolutely and quite right. When he looked in the mirror, he no longer saw the poor apprentice from Nsukka. He saw a man who had made it. At first, he called Chioma every night. They would talk about Junior's school and about how she was managing her bread business. Chioma would laugh and say, "Customers are increasing. Maybe soon I'll open a small shop." Ebuka would reply, "Don't worry, when I settle fully, I'll send you money for that." But as months went by, the calls reduced. Sometimes he'd say, "I'm busy." Other times, "My phone died." And eventually, silence. Chioma would sit on her bed at night, pressing her old phone, staring at his last message. "I'll call you tomorrow." And 8, but tomorrow never came. One Saturday morning, Chioma decided to surprise him. She had saved enough to travel to Lagos. She wanted to see him, to tell him about Junior's birthday, to remind him that his family still existed. She pulled out her small jotter and flipped through the pages until she found the Lagos address he had once sent her back before the silence began. The journey from Nsukka to Lagos was long and exhausting, but she endured it with quiet strength, holding Junior close beside her. The little boy leaned against her arm as the bus bounced over rough roads. "Mummy, are we going to see Daddy?" he asked softly. She smiled through her tiredness. "Yes, my son, we're going to see Daddy." And all through the bumpy roads and endless hours, she kept whispering to herself, "At least, I'm going to see my love, my husband." The thought alone was enough to calm her tired heart and keep her hope alive. When they arrived at his apartment, her heart raced with excitement. She stood at the door, balancing a small food flask in one hand and holding Junior's tiny fingers with the other. She had cooked his favorite jollof rice that morning, the same meal she used to make back when they could barely afford meat. Now she wanted to surprise him, to show him that even distance hadn't changed her love. But when the door opened, the smile on her face froze. A tall, elegant woman stood there, flawless skin, gold earrings, wearing a sleek black gown. Her perfume filled the air. Her name was Sandra. "Yes? Can I help you?" Sandra asked sharply, her eyes scanning Chioma from head to toe, then glancing at Junior. "I'm looking for Ebuka," Chioma said softly. "I'm his wife." Sandra's eyebrow lifted. "His wife?" Before Chioma could say more, a voice came from inside. "Sandra, who's that?" Then he appeared, wearing only shorts, holding a mug of coffee, looking relaxed and different. His voice stumbled. "Chioma?" Her lips trembled, but she forced a smile. "It's me. I came to see you." Sandra folded her arms. "So this is the woman you told me about? The one selling bread in Nsukka?" Chioma's eyes filled with tears. She turned to him. "Ebuka, is this how you live now?" He looked embarrassed, clearing his throat. "Chioma, you shouldn't have come here unannounced. This is not appropriate." Her voice broke. "Unannounced? I'm your wife, Ebuka. I came to see my husband." Sandra gave a mocking laugh. "Wife? I didn't know you were married, Ebuka." Chioma's eyes widened. "You didn't tell her you're married." He said nothing. The silence cut deeper than any insult. Instead, he muttered, "Chioma, please, don't cause a scene." Her hands began to shake. The food flask dropped gently to the floor with a dull sound. Beside her, little Junior looked up confused, tugging her wrapper. "Mummy, is this Daddy's house?" he whispered. Chioma blinked hard, trying to stay strong. "Yes, my son, this is Daddy's house." Sandra looked away, smirking. "You've seen him now, so you can go." Chioma turned back to Ibuka, tears rolling freely down her cheeks. "I didn't come to cause a scene," she said softly. "I just came to see the man I built my life around, the man I believed in when the world laughed at us." Her words hung heavy in the air, but Ibuka said nothing. He couldn't even look her in the eyes. That was the day Chioma understood. Love can die without a funeral. She picked up her son's hand, turned away, and walked away with quiet dignity. Junior looked back one last time, his small voice trembling. "Bye, Daddy." Ibuka didn't answer. When Chioma left, Sandra mocked him later that day. "Guy, now your wife be that? Chai, she still day wear wrapper?" Ibuka forced a laugh, hiding his shame. "Forget it. She's just someone from my past." Those words echoed in his head long after the laughter stopped. Someone from my past. Meanwhile, Chioma sat quietly in the bus back to Nsuka, staring out the window as tears streamed down her face. Junior slept on her lap, his small hand clutching her wrapper. She whispered under her breath, "God, did I make a mistake loving him this much?" The road was long and heavy, but not as heavy as her heart. When she got home that night, she dropped her bag in the corner and sat on the floor motionless. The food flask she had carried all the way from Nsuka to Lagos was still half full, untouched. For days, Chioma stayed indoors. No food, no water. She barely spoke. She only stared at the wall, lost in silence, as Junior played quietly beside her, too young to understand his mother's pain. Her mother, Mama Grace, watched her daughter fade like a shadow. One evening, she walked into the room and said, "Chioma, I warned you. I warned you not to spend your money training that boy in school. I told you men like him forget where they came from once they wear a tie." Chioma didn't argue. She just sat there, tears glistening in her tired eyes. "Mama," she whispered, "I thought we shared through love." Mama Grace sighed deeply. She wanted to be angry, but her heart softened seeing her daughter so broken. She placed a bowl of pap beside her and said, "Eat something, my daughter. Crying won't bring him back." Chioma shook her head. "I can't, Mama. My heart hurts too much." "Don't worry, my daughter. It's just a phase. It will come to pass," Mama Grace replied, hugging her tightly. After that visit, Ibuka stopped calling completely. No messages, no explanations. He sent small money once or twice, then nothing again. And whenever Chioma tried to reach him, his line was always the same. "The number you're trying to call is not available." She began to raise Junior alone. Every morning, she tied her wrapper, carried her tray, and walked from street to street, selling bread and drinks under the scorching sun. Sometimes customers would say, "Chioma, your husband must be enjoying in Lagos." She would force a smile and reply, "Yes, he's doing well." But inside, her heart bled. The evening air in Suka was cool, and the streets were still damp from the afternoon rain. Chioma balanced her tray of bread on her head, her feet splashing through small puddles as she made her way home after a long, tiring day. Her faded dress clung to her skin, but she didn't mind. She was used to the struggle. Then suddenly, whoosh, a black, shiny SUV sped past, sending a wave of dirty water splashing all over her. Her neatly wrapped bread tumbled to the ground. Chioma gasped softly, looking down at herself drenched, shivering, and speechless. The car stopped abruptly. A woman stepped out, elegant, confident, her perfume filling the air. She hurried toward Chioma, her eyes wide with guilt. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. Please forgive me." Chioma bent to pick up her bread, her voice trembling but gentle. "It's okay, Ma. I understand. You didn't do it on purpose." But the woman wouldn't leave it at that. She kept apologizing, her face full of concern. Then she opened her bag, pulled out a small notepad, and scribbled something. "Please call me," she said, pressing a paper into Chioma's wet hand. "Promise me you will." Chioma hesitated, surprised by her kindness, then nodded quietly. 2 days later, after much hesitation, Chioma gathered courage and dialed the number. The woman's voice was warm and familiar, Mrs. Amaka. They spoke for a while, and before the call ended, Mrs. Amaka sent her home address. When Chioma arrived at the address later that week, her heart pounded. The compound was beautiful flowers lined the walkway, and the building stood proud like something out of a dream. She stood awkwardly at the gate until a guard ushered her in. Mrs. Amaka welcomed her with open arms, offered her a seat, and served her a hot meal. Chioma ate slowly, her hands trembling, unable to believe this kindness. Then Mrs. Amaka brought out a check and placed it on the table. 1 million naira, she said softly. "Please, take it. Use it to open a small shop." "I'm so sorry for what happened that day." Yoma's eyes widened, her lips quivering. "Ma, I can't accept this," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. But Mrs. Amaka smiled gently. "Please, let me do this. That day, your patience touched me. Some blessings come in unexpected ways." Chioma broke down, kneeling as she wept. That evening, as she walked home under the fading sukkah sky, she clutched the check to her chest, whispering through her tears, "God, you still remember me." Weeks later, Chioma opened a small bread and soft drink shop near the main market. She stopped hawking under the sun. Customers poured in, old faces, new faces, even travellers. People began to call her Madam Chioma Bread, and while she was slowly rebuilding her life, something else was happening in Lagos. Ebuka's new world was falling apart. His name was written in the company newsletter as Employee of the Month. 3 months later, it appeared again, this time under investigation for financial misconduct. Sandra, the woman he thought was his future, had vanished overnight. The company accounts showed large sums of money withdrawn using his ID. His signature was on documents he barely remembered signing. He tried to explain, but the board didn't want excuses. His voice that once commanded respect now sounded desperate, trembling, and small. When security escorted him out of the office, he looked up at the tall glass building that once held his dreams and whispered, "God, This can't be happening to me. Within days, his colleagues stopped calling. His so-called friends muted his number. Sandra's apartment was empty. Neighbours said she had travelled with a foreign man. He sat alone in his small flat, staring at his hands. Those same hands Chioma once held with pride, now shaking, useless and cold. He tried to rebuild, to apply for new jobs, but no one wanted to hire the man under fraud investigation. Soon, the money ran out, the cars disappeared, the respect gone, and then, one night, his body betrayed him too. He woke up unable to move his legs. The doctors said it was partial paralysis caused by stress, high blood pressure, and severe depression. He lay on the hospital bed, staring at the white ceiling. The higher I climbed, he thought bitterly, the farther I fell. One day, the nurse asked gently, "Isn't there anyone we can call? A relative? A wife?" He hesitated. He thought of Sandra gone, his friends gone, and then the image of Chioma came flooding back. Her smile, her patience, her voice that once said, "Don't worry, Ibuka. God will make a way." His pride burned like fire inside him. But humility finally won. He asked the nurse to help him dial her number. When Chioma's phone rang that evening, she was closing her shop. She looked at the screen and froze. Ibuka. Her hands shook as she answered. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was weak, cracked, almost unrecognizable. "Chioma, it's me." She stood in silence, her eyes filling with tears. "Ibuka? What happened?" He swallowed hard. "I need to see you, please." There was a long pause. Then she said quietly, "Send me the address." 2 days later, the door opened, and there she was. Chioma! But this wasn't the same woman he once mocked for wearing faded wrappers or selling bread under the sun. This was a woman reborn. She stepped in gracefully, her dress simple but elegant, her hair neatly packed, her presence calm but commanding. Behind her eyes was peace, not pain. For a moment, Ibuka couldn't breathe. He tried to sit up, but his body refused to obey. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Chioma, you look different." She smiled faintly. "Time changes things, Ibuka." He looked around, ashamed of the state he was in. A thin mattress, empty bottles on the floor, unpaid bills piled on the table. The silence between them was heavier than words. Finally, he said, "I didn't call you to pity me. I just didn't know who else to call." Chioma walked to the window, staring outside before replying, "I'm not here because you deserve help, Ibuka. I'm here because I still have a heart." Her calmness broke him more than anger ever could. He began to cry, whispering, "I'm sorry for everything." She turned to him slowly. "I forgave you long ago," she said quietly. "But forgiveness doesn't mean I'll stay." He looked up sharply. "Stay? You're leaving?" She nodded. "I'll get you someone who can care for you. But I won't stay. Not this time." True to her word, Chioma hired a full-time caregiver, a gentle young woman named Ruth, and paid for Ibuka's hospital bills in full. Then she left, quietly, just as she had once left years ago. No drama, no bitterness, no backward glance. From then on, Ibuka lived in silence, surrounded by his thoughts and haunted by memories. Every morning, Ruth would open the window and sunlight would flood the room, but to him, it always felt dim. He would ask softly, "Have you seen Chioma today?" Ruth would smile kindly and shake her head. "Not today, sir," and every "not today" stabbed him like a knife. He began to imagine her walking through the market in clean clothes, smiling at customers, her bread business flourishes, her laughter bright, and it tore at his soul because he finally realized that her peace was no longer his to disturb. While Ebuka lay in regret, Chioma's world bloomed. She expanded her bread shop into a full bakery. She now supplied bread to schools, hotels, and supermarkets. Her name became a brand, Chioma's Delight. She moved into a modest but beautiful bungalow and opened a small foundation that helped widows start small businesses. Her humility drew people close. Her strength inspired them. Sometimes, at night, she would look at Junior now, a final year university student, and thank God for mercy. She never spoke ill of his father. She simply said, "Your father made mistakes, but don't let that make you bitter. Let it make you wise." Ebuka's health stabilized, but his heart never did. Each day was a reminder of everything pride had stolen from him. He would often ask the caregiver to bring his phone just to scroll through old photos. Pictures of Chioma smiling with flour on her cheeks, Junior's tiny hands, their old room in Nsuka. He would touch the screen and whisper, "You gave me everything, and I traded it for nothing." One afternoon, he managed to get up on his wheelchair, staring out of the window as the rain fell. He whispered to himself, "If only I had known that love doesn't make a man small, it makes him whole." Asomely, tears mixed with the sound of rain. As his voice trembled, "Chioma, you were my blessing, and I threw you away." Months later, Junior visited him tall, confident, kind, just like his mother. Ebuka looked at him and said, "Son, promise me one thing. Never take love for granted. It's the only wealth that never fades." Junior nodded, his eyes wet. "I know, Dad. Mum taught me that." After the boy left, Ebuka stared at the ceiling for a long time. His lips moved softly in prayer. "God, I may not walk again, but if my story can teach one man to cherish a good woman, then let that be my healing." Moral lesson: never take a pure heart for granted. Never forget the one who held your hand when no one else believed in you. Because one day, time will reveal the truth. Who loved you for real and who only stayed for your season of shine. And if you're watching this tonight feeling forgotten, betrayed, or left behind, remember Chioma. Her husband called her local, but heaven called her chosen. She was proof that God can lift you from the same place they laughed at you and turn your pain into power. So hold on to your faith, protect your heart, and never stop believing that your story can still become beautiful. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. You never know whose heart your share might heal tonight.